those via, those will appear. More on it. Yes. Is this good? When I was quite young and quite small for my size, I met an old man in the desert of Dries, and he at least forgotten it yet. That in a terribly ticklish place, but he sang with a sunny, sweet smile on his face. Okay, that is a very good book. I'll have. I ever by Doctor. Just so you know, Art Weathersby, he's going to, I brought myself in. Weathersby is going to filming that says Art, she welcome everyone. And this is placement of the, my mic is coming in. If better, I've adjusted the position up a little bit. What? I look like a mannequin? Welcome to our virtual town hall meeting for District 11. I'm Shakese Newton, the council member for Richland County Council District 11. Thank you for joining us. This is an opportunity for the community to hear more information about the proposed rezoning request for the property on Rabbit Run and Garner's Ferry Road. We will take this opportunity to give you more information about the proposal and to answer any questions that you may have. A few quick notes about our structure today. We are accepting questions live. You can submit those via social media, on Facebook, on YouTube, or on Twitter, and your questions will be read. You can also call to give us your questions for us to ask for our meeting today. This is the first of several meetings that we will be hosting. The focus of this meeting, again, is about the rezoning request on Rabbit Run and Garner's Ferry Road. So those are the questions that we'll be taking today. At our next meeting, we will be going over general properties in the area to give everyone in the community an update on things that have already been zoned. So we ask that you keep the questions tonight focused on this property, and we will have our developer here to answer those as well as staff. With that, here's how the evening will go. First, I will introduce Geo Price, who is with Richland County Planning and Zoning, to give an overview of this property. And then we will turn it over to Kevin Steelman, the developer, so that he can walk you through the plans and the changes that they are requesting to make. At any point, again, you can submit your questions, and we will read those out at the appropriate time and have those answered. So again, welcome to our virtual town hall meeting. This is the first of many. The focus of this is for the property on Rabbit Run and Garner's Ferry Road. And with that, I'll introduce Geo Price to give you an overview of the history of this property. Thank you. Mr. Price?
Good evening. The subject property that we're here to discuss is a little more than 178, actually it's 178.9 acres. The property was formerly zoned rural, RU. In 2007, exactly June 19, 2007, Richland County Council gave third reading to the rezoning of the property from rural to planned development district or planned unit district. Within that district, as part of the PDD, the developer has to outline what his particular uses will be within the development, establish the number of units, the type of uses again. They can request setbacks. They basically can design their own little zoning designation as part of the planned development district. So what was previously approved was of the 178.9 acres, 44 acres was devoted for single-family dwellings, which was going to have a net of approximately 4 units per acre. 12 acres, again, for single-family attached dwellings, about 8 units per acre. 18 acres for multifamily residential with a net density of 16 units per acre, and 30 acres for multifamily residential with a density of 16 units per acre also. So that's a total of 48 acres of multifamily. In addition, 62 acres of the property was designated for commercial use. Within some of the main stipulations of the PDD was they would have no more than 3 curb cuts on Garners Ferry Road, and they would have no more than 2 curb cuts on Lower Richland Boulevard, and they would have no more than 3 curb cuts on Rabbit Run. As again, this property was rezoned in June the 19th, 2007. What the applicant is requesting now, and this is what is coming before County Council, is the proposal they have is to amend the approved PDD. What that PDD will allow them to do, the proposed amendment, was essentially to reduce the number of multifamily units within the approval and increase the number of single-family. And what will result from this would be a reduction of about 200 units from what was previously approved. So they'll go from 1,040 units down to 846 for a total build-out for residential use. Again, this project was approved in 2007, and what they're requesting is an amendment to it. If the amendment is approved, then this will change as they so requested, and that's how they will be able to develop it. If the county council, in their wisdom, decides to deny this request, they would be able to develop this site based on the previous planned development district rezoning.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I am Kevin Steelman. I am the president of Landtech. We're a local real estate developer here in Columbia. I live in Richland County myself, have since 1999, and have been actively developing throughout the county since moving there in 99. I have a presentation, just a very brief presentation, kind of summarizing our request and a lot of the information Mr. Price just shared with you, so I'll shortcut some of that so you don't have to hear all those numbers again. But if you would, this is just a summary of the PD and most of the information that Mr. Price just reviewed with you. Again, the big picture is this was a planned to be a mixed-use community at the intersections of Lower Richland Boulevard, Garners Ferry Road, and Rabbit Run. And I think it anticipated a version of what is now the Rabbit Run connector, maybe with a slightly different alignment, but that road has now been built. And so really the gist of what we're here for is the original concept had a higher concentration in multifamily apartment dwellings. Our expertise is in single-family detached and single-family attached dwellings, which would be townhomes or duplexes. And that is that's the use that we would like to pursue with the portion of the property we're acquiring. The Bunch family owns the property, and they were the ones that originally got it entitled back in 2007, and they are not developers themselves. And so they've reached out to us to do the residential, and then another group will eventually develop the apartments and the commercial land use. So as Gio mentioned, the original plan had 1,040 residential units, which equated to approximately 10 units per acre of the residential acreage. The residential, all the different residential uses totaled just over 104 acres. So it was approximately 10 acres. The project also had an acre or so that was to be conveyed to Richland County, which has now occurred and is now, I guess, dedicated right-of-way of Rabbit Run Connector right at the intersection of the new connector and Rabbit Run Road. So if you would go to the next page. This just shows a map. So all the land uses that Mr. Price just reviewed, in addition to determining how much of each type of use, this map is what was approved that showed where those uses could be located within the property. So the commercial property was generally on the frontages of Garner's Ferry Road and Lower Richland Boulevard, and single-family residential on Rabbit Run Road, some single-family attached along Rabbit Run, and then you transition from that to multifamily, kind of in between the commercial and the single-family land uses. And so then fast forward to what we would like to do. Very similar configuration. We basically have made no change. There's some slight rounding differences possibly in the acreages for the commercial. We're maintaining the buffers along Lower Richland Boulevard and Garner's Ferry Road that were originally planned. And basically what we've done is take the single-family detached, the single-family attached, and the smaller multifamily site, and combined those three into a single site that would have all single-family detached use. And then we've taken the larger 30-acre multifamily site and converted approximately 1/3 of that to a single-family attached, which would be, again, a townhome or a duplex use. And so our company would be moving forward with development of those two parcels. And then the multifamily piece, again, would be another developer at some point. And again, we tried to mold the original vision for the mixed use of the site and the comprehensive plan for this site, which calls for a mixture of uses, and but make it fit our development plan. And so all the same uses are there; they're just in slightly different locations and in different quantities, both in acreage and number of units. And a couple of points to note here. I think we anticipate only 2 access points on Rabbit Run, possibly a third for the commercial, but for the residential component, there would just be 2. And then the Garner's Ferry connections that have been planned for and Lower Richland Boulevard connections that are as originally planned. And it's not shown here on this map, but we would envision connecting also to the Rabbit Run connector to just provide another outlet for interconnectivity and circulation. Ultimately, none of those locations are by any means final. They're all preliminary and ultimately will be determined in coordination with Richland County and SCDOT, just to make sure that we provide interconnectivity within this development, and then also consider all the existing traffic patterns around the development. So if you would, this table kind of summarizes the plan that was previously approved and what is proposed, and then calculates an increase and a decrease. So basically, the big picture here again is we've added 255 single-family detached units, reduced 11 of the single-family attached, and removed 438 apartments for a net decrease of 194, which brings the overall density down to 8.2 units per acre from 10. So it's about 18%, or exactly 18% reduction. And again, the commercial acreages are remaining unchanged. This is an area that is plan calls for commercial uses along Garner's Ferry and Lower Richland, and so we don't intend to change any of that at this point. I think that's it for there. And then finally, just a kind of a conclusion here is we think what we're doing here is consistent with both the original concept for the PDD and the county's comprehensive plan for the area. We're simply looking to convert some multifamily development into single family, which results in a lower density. And ultimately, I think probably the thing people care about the most is we will be coordinating closely with Richland County and DOT for all locations of any entrances or access points for the residential, and then also ensuring our residential development plans for interconnectivity to the ultimate commercial uses. And just want to make sure that we provide good access to all the major arteries in the area for our community, and then ultimately also provide interconnectivity for other surrounding properties. So that is kind of an overview or summary of what we envision and the details of our request, and be happy, obviously, to take any questions or add to that if you'd like, Ms. Newton.
Thank you. And again, you can submit your questions online or by email. You can also call in your question at 803-766-5678. We do already have some questions that have come in, and I will just state one thing as it relates to coordination with DOT regarding transportation. Just want to let everyone know that one of the things that I did was I reached out to Senator Darrell Jackson just to say, hey, this is a plan that's proposed for this area. Have a lot of concerns about Rabbit Run. What can we do to coordinate with DOT? It's extremely important that we make sure that that road would work for any development that was approved. And so that is something that we're going to work on together in terms of talking to DOT to make sure that they pay special attention to this area. With that, our clerk to council, Andrea Mathis, has been keeping a list of running questions. Again, the focus of this meeting today is going to be about this requested rezoning for Rabbit Run. We will have other meetings where we talk about an overview of the area and other PDDs that are in our community. But for right now, Ms. Mathis, are there any questions that you can share?
Yes. So the first one is a Facebook question. LaShonda Outing, will any of the proposed units be apartment structures?
Ultimately, there will be apartment units. It looks like, based on the map, it would be reduced from 769 originally planned to 331. That would be not be part of what we're constructing initially. All of the lots that we would be developing will be single-family detached, so single home on a single lot, or attached, which would be two or more units connected, but each would be on an individually owned lot, separately platted lot.
This is a question from Plan Development. Will you describe the building materials of the residential units, i.e. brick, siding, or a combination? Will the units look like those at Burnside Farms? What will the starting price of the single-family homes be, and the average cost to rent the multifamily units? And will these units be used for Section 8 housing? We have several parts to this question, so there's probably about 7 sections, so bear with me.
Sure, I'll do my best. So first, it was, I think, related to the building materials. That will be a combination of brick, stone, stucco, vinyl siding on all the exteriors. So it'll be some combination of all of those materials. I haven't personally looked closely at the units in Burnside Farms. I am familiar with that development, but my guess is that they would be similar to those materials, just knowing the builders that are in there. And starting price points would probably be in the very high 100s to the low and mid 200s, thousands, that is. We do not build homes. We develop the lots and sell to a builder, but knowing what we anticipate ultimate home sales prices to be. That would be our expectation, that the homes would be in the high 100s to the low and mid 200s. The multifamily units I can't address because we won't be developing those. That's not something we know the answer to.
Would you like to mention anything about the Section 8 housing part?
None of what we're doing would be, everything we would be doing would be either for sale, owner occupied, or there some may be for rent, but none of them would be Section 8. When the apartment developer comes along, can't speak to that, but on everything that we're doing, it would be all owner occupied or for rent, but not Section 8.
So part 2 of this question, who will provide water and sewer services to this development?
Richland County, I know, provides the sewer, or will provide the sewer, I believe, City of Columbia, or does Richland County have the water in that area? I'm not 100% certain. It'll be a public utility. I believe it's the city, but Richland County for sure is the sewer because the sewer line's already in place.
So part 3, will you develop the 5-acre green space for use by the community, i.e. playgrounds, benches, riding, walking trails, basketball courts, etc.?
We will definitely, in the open spaces, have areas for passive recreation, to include playground areas, benches, sidewalks. I think probably that would be the extent of it. We wouldn't be planning any tennis courts or basketball courts. But I know we're in pretty close proximity to the county's recreational facilities close by.
Part 4, please describe the planned commercial use for the development.
I do not know. I have no idea what that ultimate commercial use will be. So I just can't address that.
So part 5, the plan calls for 3 access points on Garner's Ferry Road. How will the traffic be managed and directed? Will there be a traffic light placed in this area due to the high traffic flow and Schneider's electric traffic?
That will all ultimately come back to DOT. Anytime you're accessing a DOT road, they're going to dictate what turn lane improvements are made, what traffic lights, and whether an intersection warrants a traffic light or not. That will all be a decision made ultimately by SCDOT. We, at this point, are developing just the residential, so we won't be making any connections to Garner's Ferry. Ultimately, when the commercial acreage in the front is developed, that's when the connections to Garner's Ferry will be made.
So part 6 says, what is the maximum number of units per acre based on the current zoning code? Does this fit in with neighborhood master plan for Southeast Richland County for medium density developments? How often are the zoning codes reviewed and updated?
I think I can speak to the current, which is the 1,040 is planned based on the current zoning for this parcel, which was 10 units per acre. We've proposed only 8.2 per acre for a total of 846 units. From what I read in just staff reports, I believe that's consistent with the overall comp plan, but maybe Gio could chip in if I'm wrong there.
Yes, you're correct. This proposed project is excuse me, fits with the comprehensive plan. It also fits with the CERN, which is the southeastern plan in that particular area. So all of the master plans and the comprehensive plan support this request.
And I've been, question 7, I think will be addressed in a different meeting. So I'm moving to the next question. This was a YouTube question. Anton Cochran, why are you building so much without the infrastructure in place? Rabbit Run can't handle what you're proposing with the sidewalks in place.
Don't know exactly how to answer that. I know we'll be constructing interior roads, and from our view as a developer, when you look at this site, between Garners Ferry and Lower Richland Boulevard, Rabbit Run connector, water and sewers all there. This is a site that is, in our view, has the infrastructure to support this type of development and is the ideal place for this type of development.
So we have another large section. So this, I would like to begin by thanking Mr. Steelman for reducing the total number of planned DUs. Although further explanation of what having more single-family homes versus multifamily homes will do to traffic patterns would be helpful. I also think 4 and 8 DUs per acre is going to make for some very small lots. This is a concern for those of us who have lived here for a long time and have home sites that are much larger. So my question is, could the number of DUs per acre be reduced to 3 and still make room for the developer to make money? I would also like to ask if this development follows this statement in the plan for developing Lower Richland. Promote development that is respectful of existing neighborhoods as well as natural, agriculture, and historic resources.
I think what we did was try to shoot for a lower overall density, again, keeping the mixture of uses that were originally proposed, but blending the density to ultimately bring down the total number of units. I think my guess is, and we don't have a land plan yet because we're not going to get out in front of ourselves here until we get this approved. We don't really have full engineering drawings or sketch plans of exactly what we've got here. My guess is that while we are permitted to get to 430 units based on the lot sizes we would anticipate, which would be 6,000 square feet on probably the typical lot and 4,800 square feet as the smallest lot, that we likely won't hit the maximum here that would be allowable. So, but until we get there, we won't know that. We'll need to make sure we've, of course, handled all the stormwater requirements and set aside all the open space that we need to. So I think with the buffering and the open spaces we're providing, then clustering the homes on the smaller lots, I think will allow the community or the project to be very harmonious with the surrounding development. But I think at density much lower than what we're talking about, I think it would start to become economically not feasible. So I think we've tried to come to the table with a plan that is mindful of the need to blend and be harmonious with the surrounding development and reduce overall density, but also have enough density there to make it a financially feasible endeavor.
This is just a comment from Facebook. Apartments are going to bring more traffic. Put the apartment entrance on Garner's Ferry side. So again, that wasn't a question, it was just a comment.
And that is the plan. I think ultimately the multifamily and the commercial will all be accessed primarily from Garner's Ferry. There will be some interconnectivity for emergency egress purposes primarily, but the primary access will come from Garner's Ferry, not Rabbit Run.
So this is a Facebook question. The 2 road connections to Rabbit Run are connection to the multifamily units.
So that's what I just was referring to there. There will be some interconnectivity between the single-family development and the multifamily for emergency egress, but the primary entrances for residential single-family will come from Rabbit Run and the Rabbit Run connector. The primary entrances for commercial and multifamily will come from Garner's Ferry.
So we have 2 questions from Facebook. What about the widening of the Lower Richland to support the building of Rabbit Run?
Not sure what, I'm guessing there's right-of-way needed to complete a widening of Lower Richland Boulevard. I suspect that has been accounted for in the planning of that that widening. I don't know if there's a specific improvement there, but we're not involved or privy to that.
Okay, and then there were two comments from Facebook. Also, are the single-family units, I'm sorry, are the single-family units location to Rabbit Run? I think she means, what are the single-family units?
Yeah, so basically, we will have homes that are adjacent to Rabbit Run Road, none obviously with direct access to Rabbit Run. We'll have an entrance or possibly two on Rabbit Run, and then a connection ultimately to the Rabbit Run connector. Our vision would be that the homes would be backing up to Rabbit Run Road, and that we would leave some sort of vegetated buffer along the property line.
So this was a question directly submitted. So, good afternoon, living in this area. How are your plans going to elevate the congestion that is already in this area? Leesburg Road and all side streets are already backed up with traffic from that area. How will the traffic to the only high school be elevated?
When we go to move forward with our single-family development, part of what we'll be required to do is submit traffic studies to SCDOT, which will involve probably some turn lane improvements on Rabbit Run Road, possibly some at the intersection of Rabbit Run and Lower Richland Boulevard, although I don't anticipate that. But I think primarily all of the concerns that they're speaking of here really are larger DOT issues and not issues generated by this project.
Next, we have a Facebook question. Why wasn't a community meeting planned to hear constituent concerns? Also, the noise pollution and influx of traffic in this area can be barely handled now.
I think from the first question, I think what our typical process in the normal process in development in the county is, as a developer, we make application to the county, and then the county has a planning commission meeting, and then public hearing, and 3 total readings of the amendment, which all give the opportunity for public input. I think this meeting was held to go above and beyond that, and in order to get information out to the community before there are any actual votes taken on this. And we were certainly happy to participate and attempt to get as good of information out as we could. And would be glad to have additional meetings if that was warranted, before the next meeting.
Moving to the next comment, again, this
Ms.
is another.
Mathis? Thank you. If I could also quickly address this, again, as Mr. Price stated, this is a zoning use that was actually approved back in 2007. So there would have been a zoning public hearing at that time when this was initially approved. The reason that I wanted to host this meeting is because there are a lot of people who may not have participated back in 2007. I know that I didn't participate back in 2007, to give them an opportunity to ask questions. And so this is an opportunity to do that. But I do know that as part of our planning process, those initial meetings would have been had back in 2007. But I just felt there was a real need for people to have an opportunity to ask questions, because that was a really long time ago. With the county being, for the most part, closed, we wanted to stream this meeting live so that people didn't have to log in onto YouTube, that they could see it with anyone who had access. So we did want to provide an opportunity, even though the county isn't fully open, for people to ask their questions. But again, there would have been hearings back in 2007 for the original property when it was zoned for housing, but really wanted people to have an opportunity to ask questions now. We will also have a zoning public hearing at the beginning of May where people can add comments in that process. So just wanted to add that before you ask the next question, Ms. Mathis. Thank you.
So this next, again, is a Facebook comment. Traffic considerations are being looked at for Garner's Ferry and Rabbit Run. The connector has already caused issues for homeowners on the same side as Schneider Electric. Please keep that in mind that families live on both sides with active lives and need to access Garner's Ferry toward Columbia as well as toward Sumter.
That is noted, and we will, again, be coordinating closely with DOT as we're determining the ideal locations for our access points and so that we minimize any impact on existing traffic patterns.
So moving to the next question, there's several. Do you own the land now? How can you speak about rezoning if you do not own the property? You do not have engineering plans yet, and that is a question. Do you have architectural plans yet?
Okay, we do not own the land. We have a contract right to purchase the land, and we're working through our due diligence and inspection period now and plan to close on the purchase of the property, the portion of the property that we're going to develop towards the end of this year once we've gotten through zoning and gotten all our permitting in place. And the reason we can speak about rezoning is that the owner of the property has authorized us to do so. They're the party with whom we have a contract to purchase. We do not have engineering plans yet because until we know what our zoning is, we don't know what to do. We also do not have architectural plans because we don't build homes. We will sell developed lots to builders, and then we will review their architectural plans.
So moving to the next question, will we be able to discuss the commercial and multifamily portions with the developers before the final reading on this development?
Don't believe that will be the case because currently there is no one in line to purchase and develop the multifamily or the commercial sites. I think many times commercial development follows residential development once the rooftops are there. And traffic counts are there. I would expect that the commercial and multifamily will come later. I will point out, though, again, that the commercial is the same commercial that was approved in '07, and the multifamily is basically in the exact same location. We've just reduced it by about 50%.
Dr. Randolph, I will be more than happy to email you the ordinance for the planned development district, which will include all of the permitted commercial uses within that within this property.
So this is a YouTube question. With the existing flooding on Rabbit Run, how does DOT plan to address the additional proposed inhabitants that will occupy Rabbit Run? Why is DOT here to explain?
Why are they not here to explain? I think, again, ultimately, DOT generally won't get involved in this situation until we actually submit full plans to them and ask for an encroachment permit to access their roads. And then at that point, they will review our plans and ultimately decide where they will allow the encroachment to occur. I'm pretty sure that where the creek comes across Rabbit Run and is flowing towards Garner's Ferry, there's already been some work done on this property that the Bunch family gave land either to the county or to DOT, I'm not sure which, but some improvements have been made to try to address some of that drainage already.
And just to speak on that, you're correct. I believe that property was given to DOT. At least our records indicate that it belongs to DOT. Also, as part of, this is just the beginning stage to essentially ask, can I do this? Once they submit plans, the engineering plans, that's when we will be looking at this and also working with DOT to ensure that it doesn't contribute to flooding in that, especially off of Rabbit Run Road.
So moving to the next set of comments and questions. So why is there a need for apartments Why couldn't it be more of a suburban development like other developments around there? If you look at Hopkins, it is more single-family homes and developments. You mentioned Rabbit Run and Lower Richland area where traffic will be diverted. There is development going on there, and that is where the high school and fire station are located.
Well, I think the first part of the question relates to, why the need for apartments. And I think we are here saying we don't think there's a need for as many apartments as were approved in 2007. We think a more appropriate use is more single family. We do think, based on the long-term plan for the area, the county's comp plan, the need for rental housing, particularly with the proximity to the military, that multifamily is a very appropriate use for the area. It just, in our view, to a lesser degree than what was originally approved, and that's part of our request, is reduce that overall apartment count and increase the single family.
So the next is a Facebook question. Respectfully, if your project increases traffic, then it is your issue to solve, as well as the Department of Transportation. Please be respectful of those living in the area. Rabbit Run and Lower Richland do not seem well suited for the proposed additional traffic. What impact will the project have on the fire department and the sheriff being able to respond quickly to emergencies given their station's close proximity to the project?
I think on traffic, again, when we make application to DOT, we will have to demonstrate to them that we're mitigating the impact of our project, but we're not required to mitigate existing issues. So to the extent that our project is adding additional vehicles to the road, then we're going to be required to make typically turn lane improvements, but in some cases widenings of portions of the road that we're accessing in order to mitigate our impact. And again, that'll be done in coordination with DOT as we work through permitting. I think the fire and sheriff being able to respond quickly, I don't think, if any impact that we have, will have a positive impact, because we'll be dramatically increasing tax base, which funds all that.
So this is a Facebook question. What conservation or environmental justice issues are being considered based on the geographical topography of the Lower Richland community?
Don't know that I fully understand exactly what that's getting at, but I will say that this particular property is basically is farmland. It's very, very, very sparsely wooded. Most of it is, I think, a dove field now and is farmed actively. So there'll be very limited clearing or land disturbance that will be done. We are setting aside open spaces and a portion of the property that gets down to near the creeks, and we'll be setting aside areas much larger than were required for buffering and keeping reducing any environmental impact near those streams.
So we have another Facebook question. Rabbit Run was never built to handle the current traffic stemming from the high school, neighbors, and transportation yard. Has this been considered?
Well, I think I feel certain it was considered back in 2007 when the project was approved. And then as we move forward with actually doing the development, we will, of course, be studying traffic flows. I think one of the keys to this is that we will be providing access out directly to the Rabbit Run connector, which could allow people to get from this project out to Garner's Ferry without ever going on Rabbit Run. But we'll be studying all the traffic of all the major arteries around the property to minimize any impact on traffic.
So again, another question. Can the council separate the approval of single-family development and hold on approval to the multifamily and commercial development units, more details are available to the community. I think she means as more details are made available to the community.
I think council can probably do most things, but I think in this particular situation, the key is that the commercial and the multifamily are already there in the locations where they are, in the quantities of acreage that they are. So we're really not changing the commercial at all. The multifamily, we're dramatically reducing the amount that's currently approved for the site. So I think this is a big step forward in terms of having some clarity on what is ultimately going to be developed on the property.
You're correct. I believe that this was this project was starting of new, essentially coming in from rural to a planned development district. I believe that council would be able to make certain changes to the request. You know, they could make motions to approve only certain aspects of the PDD and eliminate others. However, I think as it's stated, we've stated this a few times, this is already an approved planned development district. All of the permitted uses have already been identified. What's before you, what is before council, is essentially to make some amendments to it. So regardless of if council were to deny it, you know, again, the multifamily is a permitted use, as is the commercial. At this point, it's just a matter of will council allow the reduction of the multifamily and the increase of the single family.
So just to clarify, these are several statements and questions. If I understand, you do not own the land, you do not have engineer plans, you do not have architectural plans. Are you building the homes? If you are not the builder, the homes, and the other items above, how can we be expected to agree with this project with all of the above unknowns?
He understands correctly. We do not own the land. We have a contract to buy the land. We haven't engineered the land because we don't do that until we have our zoning, and we don't have architectural plans because we're not the builder. We will be selling lots to a builder who will build homes. We will have architectural guidelines to ensure that the components, the homes are very compatible with one another interior, and will also take into consideration all the surrounding communities to be sure that our architecture is compatible with those surrounding. And so I think, as is typical in a situation where there's a rezoning, you can't anticipate an outcome and make all the investment. So what we're doing here is we know generally what we want to do. We know generally we want to build single-family homes and reduce the density of this project. And when we have the zoning in place, we'll move forward full speed on engineering and permitting.
I believe that concludes all of our questions.
If there, I know a lot of times we don't think of all of the questions that we have at this very moment, but if anyone out there has any further questions about this particular request or any other zoning issues, whether it be in this area or just whatever questions you may have regarding the development of land, you can email the zoning or the planning department at Planning Commission, Richland County, Planning Commission at richlandcountysc.gov, and staff will do the best that we can to answer some of the questions that you propose.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Thank you, Mr. Steelman. Thank you to all of our Lower Richland community members who have watched this meeting and submitted their questions. Again, to remind everyone, this is the first of several meetings that we'll be hosting. This meeting was to focus on the rezoning at the Rabbit Run property. To answer your questions, different from other rezonings that come before us. Usually a rezoning request is for something entirely new. In this case, this is something that was already approved by council in 2007, and they're coming to us to ask to have that changed and to reduce the amount of housing that is there. So that makes this a little different, but I wanted to make sure that even though it was approved back in 2007, that people did have an opportunity to ask questions. It looks like, did we get? We got several more questions. Okay, looks like we got a few more questions, and we have a few more minutes before we wrap up the meeting. So if you can read those questions that we had submitted, and then if people have additional questions after this meeting, again, you can submit those to planning. And after we answer these questions, I will just, either I or Mr. Price will just give you an overview of the next things that happen in this process, and then we'll close our meeting.
So these are Facebook questions. Have you considered crime going up? Have you considered the roads that are already in poor condition? And then the low-lying topography of Lower Richland demand considerable environmental impact studies. We have had the highest rainfall in the past 3 years, resulting in major flooding in this area, hence the flooding questions. Councilwoman Newton has an environmental impact study been done on this property since the initial approval of the zoning designation? And then finally, what phase was Alexander Point in 2007? I personally did not purchase my home until 2008. It seems there should have been a meeting held at least once on the subdivision at 75% or close to the last phase being completed, not while the subdivision is still in its first phase. The majority of the residents were not aware of this until recently. Is this the normal process? It puts the residents at a disadvantage to provide input or suggestions if the subdivision is not full, half full. So there were several questions. Would you like me to start from the beginning?
Sure. I've got, yeah, sure, if you would.
So the first question is, have you considered crime going up?
And I think, is that a question that going up as a result of our development, or that they're already going up and I don't know exactly how to respond to that. I don't anticipate our development leading to crime going up. If there is crime going up in the area, then I suspect that our development probably only helps that, because again, it provides additional funding to police.
So the second part is, have you considered that the roads are already in poor condition?
I think the roads probably in most places in South Carolina are in poor condition, and I think the county and DOT addresses those concerns as adequately as they can. And in this case, I think we understand the condition of the roads, and again believe this site is ready for the proposed development.
So the next question has to do with the topography of Lower Richland. The low-lying topography of Lower Richland demand considerable environmental impact studies. We have had the highest rainfall in the past 3 years, resulting in major flooding in this area, hence the flooding question. Councilwoman Newton, has an environmental impact study been done on this property since the initial approval of this zoning designation?
I'm going to let our staff person address your question, Mr. Reese.
No, I'm not aware of any type of environmental impact study being done on this property. Again, the rezoning occurred in 2007, and normally if there's going to be any type of study done on the property, and I think one of the things that you may be alluding to is also engineering submittal and talk about the flooding, but that has not been done at this point. We expect to get that, or essentially we require that when the site is ready to be developed. But at this point, there's not been a study that I'm aware of.
Okay, so the last part of this is, what phase was Alexander Point in 2007? I personally did not purchase my home until 2008. It seems that there should have been a meeting held at least once when the subdivision was at 75% or close to the last phase being completed, not while the subdivision is still in its first phase. The majority of the residents were not aware of this until recently. Is this a normal process? It puts the residents at a disadvantage to provide input or suggestions when the subdivision is only half full.
I think I can speak to, this project received the PDD zoning in 2007. I think had we not had the economic collapse that we had in late '07, early '08 that hit and lingered for many years, we probably wouldn't be dealing with such a long lag time between the original zoning and now that the property is ready to be developed. The other thing that was really limiting any development in that area was the lack of availability of sewer, which has now been resolved in part because there's a new sewer line that runs through this proposed property or this property. So I think there are a lot of factors, but as Mr. Price alluded to earlier, there would have been several planning commission meeting, a public hearing, and multiple readings back in '07 when the PD was originally approved. And again, the lag between that approval and now being ready for development is really attributable on just market factors between lack of availability of infrastructure or utilities and the housing collapse back in '07, '08.
So I believe the last question that we have is a Facebook question. Have you considered the impact on the schools overcrowding? Was this discussed with the local school district?
Whenever we receive a rezoning request, we always send out the agenda, and we've reached out and spoken to all of the 3 school districts that within the county. So 1, 2, and 5. Excuse me. So Richland School District 1 was notified of this request, and if they have any questions or concerns, they are free to make comments to staff, and which we would then relay those to, at least at the beginning, to the Planning Commission and also to County Council for their consideration. But at this time, we have not received any.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Again, thank you, Mr. Seelman. Thank you to all of the Richland County staff who have come here safely, socially distanced to support this meeting today. Thank you to the community that has joined to ask questions. Again, if you have additional questions, you can submit those to our Planning and Zoning Department. The purpose of this meeting was to give you an opportunity to ask questions. Again, I wasn't part of County Council in 2007. I can't say that I attended any of those meetings back then, but because it's coming before us, this was an opportunity to ask questions because we don't want to be surprised when things go up in our community, and we want to have a chance to be heard and to ask our questions. So thank you for attending this meeting. This meeting will be archived on YouTube, so you can watch it again. This is the first of several meetings that we will be hosting to make sure that you know about things that were approved in the past for zoning in our community. Just like this property, there are people that didn't know that it was approved in 2007. We want to make sure that that doesn't happen with others. So if you have questions additionally, please feel free to submit those to our planning department. Thank you again for watching. Thank you to everyone who has participated. Again, the next step is this went through our planning commission. It went through our planning commission, and it will be presented to County Council at our zoning public hearing. That will take place at the beginning of May. So thank you again. You want to add something?
4th Tuesday of May.
The 4th. It will be the 4th Tuesday of May. Thank you, Mr. Price. And we will be continuing to share that information. I will continue to share that information on my Facebook page and via email for those of you whose addresses I have. So thank you again. Have a wonderful night, and thanks.